Welcome to the Burnout and Beyond podcast. I am your host, Victor Bartley, and in this space, we explore the complexity of burnout, the recovery journey, and the prevention measures in the lives of people. Burnout syndrome is not anything new, but has been an existing pandemic within mainstream culture. Leaders in various industries have faced this in silence often, but we want to encourage every listener that you are not alone, and burnout is an invitation to begin again. Today's episode is an open book into the life of Manuel Arteaga's world. In this discussion of his own experience with burnout, Arteaga has a gift of being vulnerable with discretion and authenticity. Join the conversation as we grow beyond the burnout with Manny. Welcome to another episode of Burnout and Beyond, where we explore the impact, the journey of recovery, and preventative practices that leaders in various industries experience as it relates to burnout. And we want to learn today, we have the privilege of learning today from a special guest, Manuel Arteaga. I'm Victor Bartley, your host, and I'm so glad that you are here today with us. Manuel, welcome to the space, man.
Hey, man, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely, man. I first came across you post that was shared with me on IG, and I deeply connected with it and related to it. And I said, man, I've got to find a way to possibly get him on the space. And so I'm grateful that you accepted the invitation.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, man.
Absolutely. So, Manuel, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I am a pastor. I'm a pastor here in Southern California. Been pastoring now for 14 and a half years. Been going nonstop for 14 and a half years. So I pastor full-time a Spanglish congregation here in the LA area. And I'm also a doctoral student. All of that on top of being a father and a husband and brother and a son and everything else that goes along with that. Yeah.
Okay, man. Yeah. You're already telling us a bit about the nuances that you are experiencing from the personal, just the roots of who you are, and then also just the source of manifestation of your gifts and various things. Man, tell us if you could, one experience or maybe it's multiple series of burnout experiences that you've had.
Man, I've had so many cycles because I feel like it's happening in cycles where I go through my burnout and somehow there's a second wind and I get back up again and I go and because I don't address the burnout the first time, the second time around, it goes even deeper and darker. And then there's that third wind. And I feel like I've been going through these cycles now, probably for the last, it will be going on 7 years. 7 years of that. Out of the 4 years of ministry, 7 years have been in burnout. I think the by far the worst has been the 2020 burnout. Okay. Where interestingly enough, in January 2020, I got my sabbatical approved. I was supposed to take off for three months around May or June of last year. So I had everything laid out. I had all the speakers lined up. I had how ministry was going to run while I was gone. And right as I'm gearing up to do this, pandemic hits, and it's all hands on deck as we're trying to figure out church in the midst of a pandemic. So I put my sabbatical on hold one more time, and I battled through 2020 with burnout, depression, anxiety. But here's what I think was devastating for me in 2020 is that 2020 was, if you're a person like myself, it was a year where you lost the joy of ministry. You see, my joy in ministry is not standing in front of a camera and speaking. It's people. you know? And even though, you know, I would come into this office and I would preach my heart out, just that human contact on, and it seemed like it was all withdrawals, but no deposits during that. So when I hit 2020, already burnt out, already with depression, already with anxiety. And then now it's isolation, and I give God my family because that's what kept me afloat. It was hard, Victor. It was hard, man. It's been hard because I can't honestly say I fully recovered from that. There's still some residues of that, even though now I'm around people and buildings are open and all that. But it's been a challenge, man. It got pretty dark over the last year and a half.
Wow, man, you've opened up a lot of light on this topic that I think so many can miss the significance of, and that is people can be high functioning leaders and be burned out. Like that burning out doesn't always mean that you are just, you know, lying in bed or you aren't able to do anything or function. There are obviously extremes that it can occur in that way. But, you know, what you're sharing, I think so many leaders, whether pastors or in other industries, is so important because you're acknowledging the presence of burnout, you know, beginning to look for solutions to it, and still acknowledging like, hey, I'm functioning. I'm, you know, my functionality is still here. And so I think that element is just a huge. The other thing that you said that I thought was powerful was the point that it happens in cycles.
Yes.
Like it happens in cycles. And if you don't address it, it's going to happen again. And just these cycles to it. And you just really kind of told, even in a snippet, my story with burnout. And so I definitely resonate with that. And I'm sure so many listeners that are listening to this right now, you may have opened their eyes to this fact that they've been trying to articulate, trying to identify what it is. And you're nailing it, man. You're nailing it. I appreciate you sharing that.
For sure.
So as you talked about those different elements, and 2020 was definitely a year for the books. You are talking relatively free about, you know, just the reality of burnout. In our work as pastors, it's almost shameful to admit that you're tired. It's shameful to admit that you're stressed. It's shameful to admit that, you know, burnout is a reality for you. What have you done? How have you been able to navigate eliminating that shame stigma personally?
You know what, man? For me, it was layered, because it's not just as a pastor.
Okay.
I'm a person of color.
Yeah.
So on top of the ministry factor, right? Part of the fact that as pastors, we start spiritualizing everything. And we think, you know, burnout, depression, anxiety, oh, it's lack of faith. Oh, it's bad stewardship of your time. You know, we go there. And if we're candid with our congregations, then it's easy for them to start questioning our own spiritual maturity, our spiritual condition. So there's that component. And then there's the cultural component as well. I'm grateful that I was modeled something healthy. My father is a man who was man enough to speak about his emotions.
Wow.
Man enough to shed a tear.
Wow.
Right? Man enough to. I witnessed my father on his knees, devastated over stress and anxiety when we came to this country.
Wow.
You know, as immigrants, and not knowing how he was going to feed his kids and how he was going to provide, I saw that modeled. So I know that being broken and shedding a tear doesn't make me less of a man, because the epitome of what a man is modeled that to me. So thankfully, the cultural aspect, even though culture would say one thing, what was modeled at home was countercultural as a Latino. So I had a healthy model in that sense. So thankfully, some years back, actually got the green light from Scripture to be broken. I got the green light from Scripture to be to feel burned out, to feel and to own it, to name it enough to be able to process it. And I'm referring to the story of Elijah that has become autobiographical for me, right? That moment in 1 Kings 19 when he's literally asking God to take his life. When I came across that story now from this perspective, from my experience, I realized, this is the prophet of the time. I mean,
absolutely.
He is the quintessential prophet. And it's not like he lacked faith, because he was literally on the hottest streak of his life, right? So it could very well be that burnout, depression, anxiety can coexist with strong faith. So seeing that not just played out in my father's life, but seeing it in Scripture gave me now the license to open up and I came clean to my church one Sabbath. I preached from Elijah and I said, your pastor is depressed. Your pastor is burned out. And it's so interesting to see how modeling that from the pulpit created ripple effects. And now other people are naming the thing. Would otherwise be, taboo. So thankfully, I was released from that shame early on in my journey, to where now I'm not trying to be. And that I posted this on that on a post that I posted a couple days ago for Pastors Appreciation. I'm not trying to be the poster boy of anything, but I do think that speaking your story, telling your truth, is going to empower someone else. Is going to encourage someone else to do the same.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And your story has already done that. Your story has done that. And, the comments that were left in the after the caption and, the likes, while those metrics don't say everything, the truth is it impacted so many more people. Because, there's some people that scroll, that read all of it and won't say a word. They'll scroll and read all of it and won't like it. Because sometimes it just hits too close to home. And so it's definitely having that impact. And such courage, man, such courage to share that, man. That what you shared about your father is nothing but a gem, man, to be treasured and deeply appreciated. Because emotional intelligence is a component of not just burnout recovery, but burnout prevention, right? And being in tune with our emotional state, which is tied to our stress. Many times when I was in a course and the professor was asking, how many of you are stressed, right? And then, people will raise their hand and say, hey, I'm stressed. And then she asked the question, how many of you are emotional? And then, of course, I'm not emotional, right? And so she was doing that to make the point that there's this misnomer that stress and emotions are just distant. But she draws the scientific from science and from her studies that really stress is the over arousal of emotions. Right. So literally, to be stressed is to be emotional. Wow. And so that connection is a powerful one. But it makes sense why burnout is so real, because as a mainstream culture, and even in our subcultures and layered cultures, emotional intelligence is not something that is made very important. It's not a value that is that is magnified, and sometimes it's shunned upon, like, oh, that doesn't mean anything, like get over your feelings and so on. Just those various statements that are made. And so for the fact that you have a father that modeled that, man, that's a diamond, man. That's a gem, man. Shout out to your pops. Shout out to your pops, man. Shout out to him, man.
Thank you.
And that's deeply incredible. So tell me a little bit about when you, after that sermon, after that message, after that talk, when you share, hey, you're looking at Elijah in living color.
Yeah.
What was, tell me a little bit about that ripple effect.
You know, people were, first of all, were thanking. They were thankful because I wasn't just, see, there was layers.
Yeah.
It showed trust in my congregation. It showed, it modeled that we were a family, first of all, right? That there was a kind of the kind of community where the pastor could be vulnerable. So they were grateful for that. It created a space for the conversation in a community of faith where usually, now I think it's becoming more acceptable, but traditionally it's not the kind of stuff we talk about in church, right? So it gave room for that. It gave men permission, you know, to be a little bit more vocal. And I know of conversations that took place at home between spouses because of that moment. And it's something that I bring up on a regular basis. I just preached on it about a month and a half ago again, from a different angle. And at one point, I mean, we're talking about reaching the point of despair, you know, to that dark where, I mean, we're talking ideations, we're talking, dark stuff. And we've created the kind of community where the pastor can name that and the church rallies around, so it's been part of our rhythm. Now I'm careful to not ever treat sermons like my therapy sessions either. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. That's wise. Yeah.
So it's not as cathartic as it could be. It's not the space for that. But at the same time, I'm trying to navigate that fine line between modeling it well and not falling into that little slope. But it's been a blessing, man. It's been a blessing to see people openly talk about it. I was actually just thinking after that post last week is I'm thinking of doing a full-on series on this, next year, just taking a month to just drill different aspects, burnout, depression, anxiety, all these things that we know are in every single pew.
Absolutely.
Every single pew, right?
Absolutely.
And just tackling them head on and making sure that I have a friend, his name is Ty Gibson. If you know Ty.
Familiar with him, yeah.
Yeah, he said something that floored me a couple of years ago. He names how evangelism in the future, the future of evangelism in the church. Now I'm talking missiology here and evangelism ministry. The future of evangelism is around mental health. It's around mental health. It's around burnout. It's around depression. It's around anxiety. And the currency is empathy. The church needs to be empathic. And we need to talk about this because it's present in every single home. So I'm thinking maybe next year we'll do an entire series and an entire project around it for the church.
Wow, no, man, that's a powerful statement, and that what you're modeling is even more powerful for the pastors that are on. For if you're a CEO or if you are a leader in your team, even in your team meetings, like in talking about this, right? Because again, we're talking about congregation wellness. We're talking about workplace wellness.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just about telling people to go exercise. It's about touching on these things that are taboo. It's kind of the idea of work life. And the truth is we bring life to work.
Yeah.
and it's all intertwined. We bring it all to work and we leave work and life still follows us. And so the reality is because who we are goes with us wherever we go. Yeah. Like not addressing these things is not an option for wellness. It's not an option for wellness.
Right.
No, that's powerful, man. I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm looking forward to it, and we'll stay plugged, man, and definitely be anticipating that series. man, and that's so powerful. Again, you've unleashed something for men. There's a trend. I think generally speaking, women are a bit more in tune with their feelings and their emotions. But men, we have been taught socially many times to suppress. There's studies that point to, the fact that anger being suppressed is something that can cut off your lifespan. And studies that point to this potentially being a factor in why men's lifespan is shorter than women's. So you're doing more than just, as you're saying, you're really living out what Ty Gibson shared with you, literally, that sharing this, talking about this, addressing it is giving life, is life-giving, literally, to various peoples and those within the body of Christ, man. No, that's incredible. That's incredible. From your experience, the burnout, depression and suicidal ideations, you mentioned that, how burnout is one stage, right? But suicidal ideations is an additional layer that obviously, as burnout begins to linger on, it can lead to. How have you been able to navigate the stigma even around that topic as well?
It's hard. Again, there's so many fine lines, right? I have 3 little ones, that one of them is a preteen. She's already entering a stage where conversations are shifting. Conversations are changing. I lead my conversations with her in mind right now. If I'm ever going to speak publicly, it's with her in mind right now. And my 9-year-old and the 4-year-old who are coming, but right now it's with her in mind. So it's an important conversation to have. It's important to name. I think there's courage in naming it. There's power in naming it.
Absolutely.
But naming it in a way that is, I never like the word balance. I like faithful.
Okay.
Right. Faithful to your journey, but faithful to a bigger truth that can recalibrate your own journey. And I think for me, the gospel is that greater truth. I try to be as frank and as open as possible. I just preached recently in a couple churches and I named it. And I named it after the bout with the darkness, not in the thick of it. I named it after the fact. And the impact that it had on the church to see a pastor. Also naming it. I had a line of about 17, 20 people ready to say me too after the fact. Have some of those conversations. So it's hard, man, because it's not something that it's not a sermon illustration.
Yeah.
It can't become that, right? You can't, it can't be the emotional tag at the end of a sermon. That's what I'm talking about, like taking it lightly. No, it has to be done with respect, because there's an 11-year-old and there's a 20-year-old and there's a 30-year-old who are going through it, and it needs to be treated with reverence, with care, with intentionality. So I whenever I do name it, I'm super prayerful about it and careful with my words to not trigger anything either. You want to name something without triggering anything on someone else. And yeah, man, it's one of those things that it's rare, because I never plan to say it. whenever I have said it, which has been few times, I felt compelled to and led to in the preaching moment to name it, and to name it very intentionally. Yeah.
Wow. No, and this is powerful. I think for preachers and pastors, faith space leaders that are watching, that are watching this. This is watching and listening to this. This is powerful because, while what you said, you were led to do that. You felt compelled to do it at periods and points. It's an art more than it is, a science, if you will.
Yeah.
And as you're saying that, there's some people that are saying, well, that's not my struggle, or I'm not comfortable saying that at this point.
Yeah.
Starting small.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Just acknowledging that I feel stressed too.
Yeah.
Or I had a rough time emotionally this week. Like, these are just smaller ways that it can be done. Because the truth is, as servants, as leaders, people become more grow with us as we reveal our humanity.
Yeah.
And the nuance of how you do it is, obviously your discretion, but again, people need to know, because again, that powerful statement that you shared about the currency of empathy being practiced and equipping people around the really the central focus of mental wellness and well-being is really the way forward.
Yeah.
It's really the way forward.
Yeah.
So no, that's incredible. That's incredible. So as you mentioned that earlier, that this occurs in cycles. As you go through the cycles of it, what helps bring you into alignment, or what helps adjust your perspective?
Yeah. For me, it's been home life. It's been my family. Over this pandemic, there's been, I would say, 4 things that have kept me grounded.
Okay.
First and foremost, the amount of FaceTime I had with my family this season has been incredible, and I've taken advantage of as much as I can.
Yeah.
Another thing has been friends. Like, I'm unashamedly just hanging out with my guys. We have taco runs every week, and we've had them for a year now and a half. Just every week on a given night of the week, we go and we literally go to the street, have tacos, and just talk about, like, we laugh, we get mad at each other. I mean, and it's real, authentic community. It's been life-giving to me. So I'm intentional about that. I'm pushing back against the loneliness that comes naturally in the ministry, by being intentional with my relationships with other ministers, other pastors. So there's been a lot of hanging out, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, man. I literally just go hang out with my boys whenever I can. And we don't just sit with ministry. We're like roasting each other, and we're just, I mean, it's fun. It's fun. We take the pastor hat off and we just have fun. The third thing has been sports, man. I exercising. I have a couple hobbies. I like playing soccer. I've been injured in and out, but I like playing soccer. I like, Krav Maga, which is Israeli combat. I'm passionate about that. And 4, I'm 39 years old. I just turned 39 this summer, and I'm like, okay, I need to pick up a new hobby. And I literally picked up photography this year. I just picked up a camera. You look at my Instagram, you're going to be annoyed because all I do is just take pictures and post them. I'm sure it's annoying to some, but that has also activated a part of my brain that is often untouched, right? Which is the creative side. I mean, you use it for sermon building and some programming and all that, but this forces you to tune out from, the board meeting and the committee of this and that issue at church. So it forces me to think differently, and just the art, the photography, the design, yesterday I walked LA for about 2 hours with camera in hand, just shooting. I'm not stressing about, finances. I'm not stressing about my board. No. I'm somewhere else. So those little things, which are sustainable, that's the thing. They're sustainable if we're intentional about it. They can be sustainable. They've been life-giving to me, man.
No, awesome, man. No, what you've shared has been powerful, and community, like where living it out in family, living it out among friends, that element of community and creativity, those two going hand in hand. And I want to even further legitimate and validate your the whole thing of playing. As we are younger, that's all we do, right? Life is about play, right? And as we shift and become older, it becomes more about what we do than who we are. Right. And so like bringing play back to your adult life is critical to living wholeness. Man. And so that's powerful. Dr. Stuart Brown in his book, Play, talks about how bringing play back to our life is actually how we invigorate our brain and generate productivity. And so that's powerful that it's having that effect.
Can I name one?
You, man.
Can I name one thing before I know we gotta wrap up soon. One of the most groundbreaking moments for me was in therapy a couple years ago. I've been on and off in therapy. I'm about to start again. And my therapist was asking about kind of what I do. Tell me your life. Tell me your week. And I started talking about how, I love, right? I'm using this language. I love to be around people, and I love to pastor, and I love to learn, and I love to study, and I love to lead, and I love. Look at my face. That was my face. I love. Now, and then I love to play soccer, and I love to go out with my kids, and I love to travel. And he said, stop. Did you notice that? Did you notice that? And he mentioned the inner child, and he mentioned, look, your inner child came out when you talked about play. Your inner child came alive when you talked about traveling and watching movies. Like there was this, you said you love, but there was this frown when you're talking about work and ministry and everything, and something about you came alive when you talked about play. You need to play more. You need to feed that inner child more. So it was groundbreaking for me. So I went myself, got myself a pair of Jordans, bought myself a PlayStation 4 game, a FIFA, and I went back to being 11, bro. And that's it. It's feeding that inner child is absolutely important.
Absolutely, man. Vital, man. And you threw in something else that I think is, and I don't know if it was something you intended to highlight, but therapy as well.
Yes.
Is a vital resource for the recovery process as well. So that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Manny, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to have you on. And we deeply appreciate those that are watching. You'll want to pay attention closely to this, particularly for our various leaders and industries. And we just want you to remember that you're not alone in your burnout experience, and that burnout is an invitation to begin again. Peace out. Woo! After that, did you feel free to tell your truth? I mean, even if you just tell it to yourself. Even if you are just having a conversation with yourself and just openly admit what the truth is. Wow, so freeing. Manuel encouraged us to resist the urge to isolate. He encouraged us as well to find community among individuals that we can trust with our story. The question for you today is, who are the people that you need to let in so that you are not alone? I want to thank you for joining this episode of Burnout and Beyond. To see previous episodes, visit the podcast page on victorspeakslife.org. If you or your organization want to grow beyond burnout, share your information by clicking the Book Victor icon. Until next time, live well.